Item 1 on the agenda is decisions and actions. To agree the decisions of the previous meeting on pages 3 to 5. Are they all agreed? No. Oh, yes, no, I've not seen them. Sorry.
They're on there.
You haven't got any minutes. I'm sorry.
It's at the beginning of the agenda.
Agenda item 1.
Agenda item 1.
Page 3 and 4.
No, but
I don't know if he's coming.
They are there, I'll show you.
If he doesn't turn up, can you give me it? Yeah, sure. If he doesn't.
Yeah. Item 2, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Deacon. Also apologies to Councillor Gale and Hobson. Are there any other apologies? No, none. Okay. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. 4, public participation. We've been notified about. There have been none.
There's one over there.
Yes. I'll alert members. We can have a member of the public present. Welcome. But not registered to speak. Consideration any matter in relation to calling, there being none. So item 6 is the first of our 4 main reports this evening. It's the leisure investment report, and I will hand over to who's presenting this one. Is it Joe?
Am I presenting that yet?
I think it's you, Joe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Over to you, Joe. Go, Guyton.
Yeah, there's obviously leisure investment report which proposes to refurbish Hemel Leisure Centre and Berkshire Leisure Centre. Yeah, that's the report has been circulated. Any questions?
Councillor Timmis?
My question is that it's a very comprehensive and expensive sort of report in what you're doing for leisure, and I applaud that. However, there is absolutely no mention of any leisure input, shall we say, financial or otherwise, for the villages and for other parts of Dacorum. It's as if we don't exist.
Tring, it's nothing for Tring.
And nothing for Tring either. Yes, you're right. I meant to say that. It just seems that it's, as usual, money is being spent, but not in the areas that you apparently can't reach.
Okay, yeah, I mean, there are outreach programmes that everyone active does do, whether that goes out to the villages or not. The issue is obviously land and building facilities. Obviously, Tring, I know there was the swimming pool at Tring School that was used, and that was refurbished by DVC. But it is obviously the school's land.
I can give you 2 examples. One, for instance, as far as Tring is concerned, you've got a huge building programme, development planned for that area. So presumably one would think you need to expand the leisure facilities or the facilities for sport. And as far as the villages are concerned, in particular Flampstead applied to see whether they could get some funding towards putting in a running track on their one field that they have and it was turned down. So I just think, it's, I do feel that I'm batting for an area that is not considered when you come to making these big decisions and spending this sort of money in leisure in general. It's as if we don't exist.
Councillor England, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel I should respond. I hear what you're saying. I think it is very difficult, particularly in a report that mainly focuses on sports centres.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit because I haven't got.
So, in a report which mainly focuses on sports centres, and there's one in Berkhamsted and there's one in Hemel, it's inevitably centred on those 2 locations. But the leisure strategy, I think, will answer your concerns to some extent in relation to the villages, because it won't ignore the villages.
But this is this particular leisure investment options, as it's called, refers to I mean, refers to decorum, so that, and we are part of decorum.
That's right. I mean, obviously, in the last 12 months, actually in the last couple of months, we have had the investment at the tennis courts in Tring. I realise that Tring is not your patch, but Tring, you
Just
did.
speaking on behalf
But
of
Tring,
the councillor.
you did reference Tring a second ago and said we're not doing anything in Tring, and we are. I think it's just really difficult to push this right into the corners. But as I say, when you see the leisure strategy, there will be, it will take into account the villages. It won't focus on that.
Can you give me
Sorry,
an idea of
before you continue, councillor, did you want to add any more to that?
Thank you. Sorry, Diane couldn't attend today, but I could also reassure you in terms of the strategy. The strategy will look at the leisure provision and looking at the integration with health and well-being and look at the offer that is throughout the quorum. This report is particularly looking at the existing leisure facilities, leisure centres, and the need of updating them. As you could see in the report, it says that the contract with Everyone Active, which is a 10-year contract, has more than doubled the actual provision in terms of usage. So initially the usage was around 400,000, now it's over a million visits, which I think also encompasses not just people of Hemel. I think people travel to these facilities. You'll be surprised that these are facilities that are also available to everyone. But like you say, there are some more specific activities and specific intervention that quorum-wide that will be looked at as part of the leisure strategy. So I think there are two distinctive things that do not necessarily act against each other. They are really complement each other. And this report is looking at just the assets, the current assets, and the need to restore those assets, because otherwise you might have a decrease in participation, a problem with the usage if we're not updating, and potential closure as well. So if we don't act on those facilities, and this will create further opportunities as well for further participation, because the restoration will actually create new possibility for new activities, etc. So it's a complementing the leisure strategy. It's not either or.
Before you come back, councillor Whitelow, was this on the same issue or different?
No, it's tangential though.
Well, I'll invite councillor Timmins to come back and then we'll come back to councillor Dunn.
Only I do feel that this, again, I understand you're talking about upgrading two existing leisure centres, and from what I heard you say, and I'm sure you said more than this, was that people could always travel. It's for a central thing. But I don't think that is so reasonable to always say we will upgrade everything in the main towns and not take any, because you're not even saying there's anything in this thing that you might have said as an addendum, and we will be also looking at the facilities that are available in the villages, because at the moment there isn't a transport, public transport, buses or anything else that would get you to these leisure centres on an easy basis from the villages. So I do think that is a consideration that it's reasonable to put that you should be considering.
Councillor Whitelow.
Thank you, Chairman. I was reading through the report, and also I've, skipping ahead of myself to Coronation Fields. It's do we charge for the use of tennis courts? I mean, we charge for the use of football pitches. Do we charge, say, for the use of tennis courts across the borough? What is our strategic policy on that?
Yes, we do now, since they've been upgraded by the LTA funding. There is a small charge for booking and utilising the courts.
And has that impacted usage?
No, if anything, they've seen, because now it can actually be monitored and utilised, we can see that people are actually using it. It is actually increasing. To be fair, they generally do see an increase when it comes around to sort of like Wimbledon and things like that. People go out and play tennis, but the usage is now being monitored and it is increasing.
Thank you.
Just to connect it to that, what is the charge? Thank you.
Because I don't know, because it's not my department. I just knew that we were charging for them, and that's the way that it works.
Councillor Stevens.
Right, thank you. Right. Thank you. It's a comprehensive report. Thank you for the details. One of the thoughts that I had is what's missing out of this. We're making here a proposal. We got to spend a pretty substantial amount of money in the upgrade, which I think is overdue, certainly for the ones we have in Berkhamsted. We've been crying out for that for a long time. The bit that's missing out of this, it would be helpful to have seen what the revenues are that comes out of this activity, what the surpluses are, and or what the subsidy might be. If you could tell us that later on, it would be helpful, I think, sort of see it as one picture. Picking up, I hear what Councillor Timmis is saying, but the point is the investment in major centres requires a catchment area, which is going to be able to support them to be self-sustaining. And I don't think it's possible to put a swimming pool into a small village and have it survive.
No, I appreciate that.
Right? We've tried.
What I would like is some recognition of the fact that the villages are not being even talked about.
Okay, you
Right.
made that point.
Right.
Carry on.
Right. Can I go on into the report itself for clarification, please? I think it's on page 8. We talk about the development partner and the client. Who's the development partner and who's the client? Just for clarification.
Yeah,
Yeah. So the report is explaining that we're looking at using a framework, and that framework uses a contractor, development partner, which currently has a huge amount of experience in terms of developing these kind of projects, etc. So there will be, as part of the framework, there will be a direct input from the council in relation to the direction of in terms of the development of the brief, the development of the design, the development of, and there will be a working group. If you look at the report, it also says about the working group. They actually will steer that development. So in effect, there will be plenty of opportunity of engagement in going from this idea, that is the investment, into the development of this idea, into more details, and then into the development of the final design. And so there would be plenty of opportunities of engagement in that particular journey.
Right. So so presumably the development partner is somebody that has been pre-approved under the development framework. Okay, right. And we would be the client?
We would be directing, absolutely. We would be directing, but we means also that there is a kind of wider engagement through this working group that is going to be an opportunity of feeding into this development while it's progressing. So there will be definitely an opportunity to do so.
Right. So in contractual terms, we would be the principal in setting up these changes.
Well, we'll have a direct say, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
I'm just wondering what the key themes were from the public consultation in terms of what the public wanted to see differently, because I know through my engagement, particularly of the youth in David, they would love to see something similar to what was at Jarman Park, an aqua splash type thing. So they'd be keen on any fun activities involving water, slides and shoots, that type of thing. I noticed there was something about the diving pit being converted, but equally then I'm thinking about what's the loss there in terms of how that's used at the moment and the appetite for diving and the training that might be happening at the pool as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, obviously, we've not gone out to public consultation with this. Obviously, that's when the working group actually starts. I know the diving pit at the moment isn't open to the public anymore. It hasn't been for a number of years. It is only used by very few clubs and scuba. So when you consider the size of obviously the actual tank, it's not value for money to have something turning over that amount of water and filtration. It just doesn't, it's not sustainable.
So you're looking at what you put in the report is potentially filling it in and then doing smaller and less.
Yeah, I mean, that will come down obviously in the design. At the end of the day, obviously these are sort of like conceptual, this is what we would like to see. It's whether it's affordable at the end of the day. I mean, the most important part is obviously pipes and wires, to be honest with you, because obviously if we haven't got that infrastructure right, then we can have all these chutes and slides if they don't work. So yeah, it will be to see what, you know, I mean, we can achieve, if you like. But that, you know, I mean, that option is, you know, is in there. We do recognise we want to make it a bit more of a destination, because there isn't anywhere that's really close, if you like. It's got that sort of fun activities.
That would be interesting if we had a Butlin style water pipe chute. Speaking as one that only just survived one back in April.
Yeah.
That would be.
There won't be no coral reef.
I think we need to manage expectations.
Yeah, I'm getting carried away here. My $22 million question is timescales.
Yep.
This is a very large project involving a large amount of money over a large amount of time, and we have this absolute nasty, horrible local government review hanging over us. He says, choosing his adjectives, watered down somewhat. Is this exercise hopefully going to actually manage to earmark the funding so we can actually get this done using our money before it gets taken by neighbouring causes? Question mark.
I mean, there is a technical question about the money in the project, but what I would say is that the residents are not moving out. They're still going to live in Hemel, they're still going to live in Berkhamsted. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, we do what we need to do for them, for their sports centre, and they're not really that interested in local government reorganisation. Probably not as much as we are.
Yes, but I'm just feel that we have a responsibility to try and keep our hands on that money before it goes elsewhere. And that's what I'm sort of asking a question mark. I'm looking for some kind of assurance that this exercise can help us to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I think that's the bit that we all agree on, is that if there is some money that we could spend wisely as decorum councillors, knowing our area better than the next unitary will.
We could arrive at a situation where neighbouring authorities have sports facilities in worse condition, and they've not got the money, and they could look at our money and say, right, well, we'll use that because ours is in a worse state. And that's the bit that are concerning me. So maybe I'm asking how long is a piece of string here, but I'm just flagging that up.
So, I mean, the timescales on the engagement we've done with obviously the framework and the development partner is that it can be achieved before local government.
Well, that's very promising, thank you.
I mean, I think we can crack on and make the decisions that we need to make, and we can get some momentum behind this project, and then we won't have any of that to worry about.
Good. Any other questions? Councillor Reddy.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've read through this report and I've got a lot of concerns about it. I think that it's got some major gaps in it in terms of what it's really going to cost. Really going to cost. This figure of 22 million or so is going to go nowhere. Because when you look at some of the other elements which are talked about needing attention, such as retiling 5 pools, replacement of plant and equipment, I'll guarantee that'll cost as much as this again.
From the costings that we've already had done by a consultant.
Yes, but there's a very convenient gap about the cost of doing that. Saying to be confirmed. That's not good enough. We need to know. Now, I can tell you these are major cost elements because I've designed and built many swimming pools. Come across a lot of these problems. I mean, once you start hacking around tight, does it really need replacing? That's the first question. Why? But if it does, you're going to have a real big shutdown on every pool in terms of hacking off all the tiles, have to check the tanking, make sure it doesn't leak, and it probably will, because I've seen that happen many times. There's going to be enormous, humongous delay. And I can see a runaway cost on this lot. I really can. And I just don't think it's worth it. I mean, you have, for example, on page 9, at item 2.0, you say the council does not have a fully costed life cycle replacement programme for maintenance obligations. Now you're saying that the costs are unavoidable. You've got to have it. Where is it? Otherwise, we don't know what we're approving. I mean, we know the costs of these things because we know the new pool for Berkhamsted is going to cost 40 million. So that'll give you a clue what all this could eventually cost us. And I think that's money we can't spend until we know exactly what it is going to cost us.
I mean, I think that we know that these sports centres and these swimming pools need maintenance. Both of the buildings are decades old. So I think to say we can put that off, notwithstanding conversation we've just had about local government reorganisation, we could find that if we don't make a move on this and we don't act fairly boldly, then we could have this investment taken away from our residents. I would not like to see that.
Yes, but this is not just maintenance. This is mega plant replacement. And I can tell you that is incredibly expensive and disruptive.
And more expensive in 2 years' time.
Can I perhaps rephrase the question slightly differently and say, in terms of, could the officers come back to in terms of where the council is on the project? And secondly, what risk management has been done so that if we are in a position where it costs too much, then we can review what we're doing.
Take that away.
If you want to take that one away? Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions?
No, that's fine, Chairman, thank you.
Okay, well, the recommendation on the report was to
Take it away. Check it.
Here we go. The members note the report and provide any comments to Karen. Well, we have noted the report and we provided comments. Is that agreed? Agreed by everyone?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Next item. Item, checking to scroll fast enough. If I was really professional, I'd be using bookmarks. Item 7. UK Shared Prosperity Fund. At this point, I will enter an apology for Diane Southern, who unfortunately is unable to join us this evening. Steph is substituting for her, I believe. Hello there. So can I hand over to you to present the report then?
Of course, thank you. I am taking the report as read, but just a couple of points just to bring to your attention. So this is the final allocation of UKSPF money. It has to be spent by March 2026. We did invite some of our partners to submit funding reports, and all the responses that we had collectively exceeded the amount of funding that we had for this year. We've got just under 580,000 for this year, which is a mix of capital and revenue funding. There was a strict criteria which the bids were assessed against. One, the main one was confidence in delivery, to make sure that there's no underspends within the required timeframe, and also making sure that the outputs and outcomes and all the criteria was met with the themes and sub-themes. Also supporting some of the ongoing projects as well, and because of the benefits that they've already provided to local residents, community groups and also businesses, and these are such as Hearts Futures and also work with the CAD. Following this meeting, depend on the outcome, we'll look forward to taking this to Cabinet with any comments that you may have.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Questions? Silence. Councillor Barlow, followed by Councillor Patton.
A very specific one, really. I'm looking at page 32 on the report. It talks about Gadebridge Park and a new section of path. So is this path to do with the completion of the rerouting of the chalk stream, or is it something else entirely?
No, it's to do with the rerouting of that. It's a contribution towards that.
Right. And so, well, does that mean then that the path itself will now be completed? Within a reasonable time frame, because most of the work has now been done, but you know the path is an important element. And I was in the park on Sunday, and it's glaringly obvious that it's needed, and it's not there.
I think there's been this project was a very expensive project focused on the rerouting of the River Gate, which the Environment Agency has contributed for the vast majority. So the Environment Agency has contributed millions of pounds, and the council has contributed about 3% of that budget. And we've got the access, like you said, you know, it looks like now a far more balanced offer in terms of the park and the accessibility with the bridge, etc. Obviously, like you say, we recognise that the park was an important part of that. And so we've managed internally to discuss about how can we fund that in addition to what is happening. The works now are nearly completed and we are approaching summer. And I think it's wise to say that we are obviously now going to, if we achieve this money, if we get this money and we can then complete the path, which I'm glad you think it's something worthwhile, then what we need to consider is about accessibility during the summer months, which are really busy, and how that can be that can fit in terms of installation and in terms of completion. So we need to consider all of that. In the meantime, first we need to get obviously the decision that the monies can be allocated to that. Once we got that, then we can get the quotes with the contractors and we can get on with the implementation. I think we need to also take into consideration the usage and how the park is used. And if we have to close the park again, I think it might disrupt a lot. So we need to think about all of those factors in terms of implementation. But the good news is that we all recognise it needed to be done. And if the money can be allocated, which it sounds like it is in the programme and is proposed, so then we can go ahead and progress with that.
Can I ask a supplementary? Yeah. So how much money is needed then? Because you've got 20,000. What's the balance needed to complete the path?
Of the 20,000 will deliver the path.
So why are we debating it then? If the money's allocated, what's the delay? You're talking about allocating the funding. Why can't we go ahead and do the work?
You have to put it through Cabinet.
We need a
Well,
decision.
of course, you're going to agree, so there's no problem then, is there?
I don't think so.
That's good. So can we press on and get it done and perhaps have you know that on rarity of firm completion dates? You know, get some fire under this and get it done. People really want to see it completed. The reaction to it has been good, and it makes a nonsense to have this gap when you've already allocated the money. Sorry,
The decision needs to be made, and then as soon as the decision is made, we can then go ahead with the project. I think what I'm saying though, we're doing quite a lot of legwork in the meantime. So we already got some quotes. We got some contractors lined up. So in effect, we're doing some anticipatory work before the decision, so that when the decision is made, we can decide on the timescales that better suits the residents and the usage of the park. Because we also need to then consider about the usage during the summer and what we want to do in terms of minimise disruption and this kind of stuff. So I think we need to be mindful of that as well.
A supplementary then. So how sure are you that the 20,000 that you now tell me is allocated and is all that's needed to complete it? How sure are you that if you just outlined all the caveats to that, how sure are you that 20,000 will then cover the costs?
We've worked that cost based on other works that we're doing that have been recently tendered, so price per square metre. So we're fairly confident on that cost.
I just don't understand the hesitation, Chairman. You're both covering your bets. As you know, well, we know the Cabinet will pass it. The money's there. I don't understand the use of the hesitant language.
I suspect it's because it's part of a bigger project. It has to be fitted in with the rest of the project. And that has a role to play in the timing of it. But I think we're all happy it's happening. Nobody's unhappy it's not happening. So perhaps we could move on to...
I think it's just that it's June now, and so the splash park is as busy as it ever gets.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a sensitivity to the fact that the park is there for people to enjoy.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do things in the shoulder season when things have thinned out a little bit. I mean, perhaps the committee could make a recommendation that we think it should be done as soon as possible, or we could say we delegate it to the officers. I'd rather do the latter.
I think we've already made our views clear that we hope the Cabinet can put it along as quickly as possible.
Well, I'll ask for it to be moved up to the first item at Cabinet, and then Ian can go out with his spade.
Noted, duly noted. Right.
The leader,
Any other?
into it.
Any more?
Oh, sorry, I beg that. Sally, please forgive me.
That's fine. I share your enthusiasm for getting the work done. We all have all agreed that we would like it done, and we would do everything to make sure it is done without upsetting any residents any further by closing the park unnecessarily at a peak time.
Any other questions on any other part of the proposed funding? Councillor Sutton. Oh, sorry, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Patterson, and then, sorry, Councillor Patterson.
It's a small point on the second appendix where the sort of allocations of the money goes out to different organisations. One, the grant to town councils for activities to support high streets goes to Berkhamsted and Tring town councils jointly, 20,000. I assume they're going to be divided equally, are they?
Yes, it will be.
Thanks. And my town clerk's written to you asking for clarification on what activities to support high streets means. What options does she have to put to the town council? When she's expecting a reply, I don't know if it'd be worthwhile you giving her a ring to go through it with her.
Absolutely, we'll work through it because we have quite a strict criteria that we need to stick to in terms of outputs, but that gives lots of flexibility, so we'll be more than happy to work.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. It seems like a really good broad range of projects, so that's good to see. I was just wondering whether the art installation that's mentioned, is that the underpass or is that a different project?
No, this will be something new, working with the bid. As part of the project, wanted to try and leave a legacy, so this art installation will be there after the UKSPF funding has gone, so it's kind of a legacy.
Lovely. Can I as ward councillor for in Hemel Hempstead Town, can I get an update on that if there's anything to?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I was just going to mention, it's not covered within this, but just as we were speaking about the rerouting of the gate, something that's come up several times is the fact that there'll be a lot more space on closer to where the road is. And so is there any provision for putting in hedges or fencing? Because a lot of people are concerned about children running into the road. I know that there's an actual bank, but has that been explored?
We are looking at options there. I mean, the immediate one will be to change the grass cutting regime as a easy win, but yeah, I know there are concerns and we've received correspondence along those lines.
Again, maybe if we could have a chat about that at some point, that'd be good. Thank you.
I did actually raise it when the project first started, along with others, so it's well in hand. There is a slope, quite a substantial slope, but it still needs to be protected in some way. Councillor Mitchell.
And just to add to that, if it could look as natural as possible, whatever we do, eventually.
Behind everything they're doing as part of the project. So.
Yeah, be looking at it every time we try.
Any other questions? No? In which case, the recommendation is to note the award of £576,888 of funding under UKSPF to the council. The proposed projects for funding provide any comments to cabinet. We've made one or two comments. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 8, Coronation Fields. Ian, sorry, Ian.
This report is around Coronation Fields Master Plan, and it's seeking the committee to note and also support some supplementary funding that we need to deliver this the phase 1 of the scheme. So Coronation Fields is in Bennett's End, but it covers or is used by a wide group of residents in Leverstock Green and down towards Apsley. So it's a strategic site within the Hemel Garden community, and will provide green links really from places like Adeyfield through to Bunkers Park, where we've got Sang. Site at present's got a disused pavilion. There is a playground that is off to one end of the park, tennis courts that have been refurbished, as we discussed earlier, cricket nets, and on the former tennis courts is a car park that is, let's say, a bit bumpy, but well used by, particularly by people who are visiting the adjacent surgery. We carried out a consultation exercise last summer from 26th of July to the 11th of September. We leafleted over 1,000 properties and we received 174 responses, so roughly about 17%. And of those 174, 95% of people live within 5 minutes. We have specific questions around the former tennis courts because it is a source of a lot of correspondence that I receive, particularly related to people who are going to the surgery who find it quite, because the limited parking at the surgery, it's used as an overflow there. So 92 of the received 108 comments, no, 110 comments on the, in relation to that. 92 comments were in favour, 9 people wished for alternative views, and 9 were against. The master plan outlines quite a range of works, but we've put them into phase 1, and that's what we're really here tonight to look, just to outline what's funded, what's unfunded. So the main element that is unfunded is resurfacing the former tennis courts. There is a lot of lobbying from across the political spectrum that's happening for that. And then there is some funding that we've identified through Section 106 and SIL that can deliver some deliver some improvements quicker. So primarily that being around the Muger and the cricket nets that is funded from a Section 106 from the SAPI site development, and that is specifically for sports facilities in Coronation Fields. And then there is some what I call softer improvements we can deliver around woodland planting, wildflower meadows, and other things that is funded again from a Section 106 agreement specifically for biodiversity improvements from the Prologis development. The other element that remains unfunded is the circular footpath. So if any of you have ever been to Coronation Fields, you can walk up and down the site, but you can't walk across the site, and that's quite a barrier for a lot of people probably using the site, and why you probably have increased car use around the areas. And then it's also quite steep, so as part of this we'd like to put in more bins and benches to kind of, so if you aren't able to walk a long distance, you can walk and rest, walk and rest, walk and rest, which is kind of promoted by public health. Yeah, so that's a run through of the scheme. So yeah, as I said, the recommendation is that The report and master plan are noted and members agreed to the phase 1 priority proposal. Support is given for the section 106 funding that we've identified. I say a large chunk of that is specific to Coronation Fields, and that the committee give consideration to supplementary capital budget of the 117,000 shortfall, which say primarily is for delivering, improving the former tennis courts and formalising the car park there.
Thank you. Before I invite comments from the committee, I'd like to ask Councillor Hannah if he has anything he'd like to say as a ward member.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here this evening. So there's a few things in the report that I'd just like to maybe update colleagues on. First of all, it only costs £6 to play for an hour in the tennis courts at Bennett's End. They've been refurbished, they're very popular. We encourage people to buy a membership of £40 a year, and then you don't have to pay at all. And a family membership of 2 adults, 2 children is £50, so it's very good value, and they're very popular. Getting back to the report, we think that we've got just over 19,000 in our SIL. We've not got a very rich SIL in Bennett's End. We don't have a lot of development, so therefore we don't generate a tremendous amount of SIL funding. We're tightly packed in with one special open space, which is Coronation Fields. We're dedicating all of our SIL in its entirety to the funding of the car park at Bennett's End Surgery, which was opened in the early 80s for circa 8,000, now caters for not only 16,000 residents spread over Leverstock Green, Bennett's End and Nash Mills, 3 wards which don't have a surgery except for the one in Bennett's End, and also for the large part, the northern part of Apsley Corner Hall, which also doesn't have a GP surgery. The partners at the GP surgery are a model of social prescribing, which means that they try to get people off of medication. So what happens is that a lot of surgeries throughout Hemel Hempstead will be referred to Bennett's End for social prescribing classes, which could involve strength and balancing or healthy walks. And one of the things that we're trying to promote with increasing the better access to the paths is to have a circular walk around Coronation Fields with mile markers on it, which we think will benefit particularly people trying to get themselves off of tablet-controlled diabetic medication and also early onset high blood pressure medication. So there are health benefits not only for the people of Bennett's End, Leverstock Green and Nash Mills directly from primary care there, but also for the whole of Hemel Hempstead because of the social prescribing work being done by the partners in the surgery. Anyone that's visited that car park will know that it's not fit for purpose. So the overflow car park, which actually has a substrate of a tennis court, has pretty much collapsed into looking like a pretty bad bomb site. And with winter approaching, what will happen is that the potholes will fill with water and then freeze. And we've had, unfortunately, cases where people have fallen over, ironically, while going to visit their doctor for a condition which is treatable. And we are in a situation where we could go nuclear with it and say, let's close the car park, but that will put pressure on the traders at Bennett's Gate shops who will say, hold on a minute, if all of the car parking spaces full up here with people from all over Hemel Hempstead coming to your wonderful social prescribing hub, which you've helped to set up, Pete, what is the point of us carrying on trading here when people can just drive to Adeyfield and park very close to the shop? So I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is get this project up off the ground, but with the priority being the resurface of that overflow car park, because unfortunately, even though it's an overflow car park, that surgery can't operate without the additional spaces that are afforded by the use of that so-called tennis court. There was a fantastic response to the 1,000 household leaflet drop, which took place in the summer last year, 26th of July to the 11th of September 17.4% represents, if anyone's ever been to university and done a questionnaire, 17.4% is, you know, get the majorettes out. That's a fantastic response. And overall, people wanted that area to be refurbished, but in particular, they wanted the car park to be fit for purpose so that people wouldn't fall over while going to visit their doctor. We're not a very rich ward. We're among the 3 most deprived wards in the whole of Decorum. So to actually have our precious space refurbished, this would really mean something to the residents who live around Coronation Fields. That's not just my own residents in Bennett's End ward, but also we're extremely close to the border with Leverstock Green ward, and it would mean a lot to them as well to use that space. And it would constitute the largest investment in that space for just over 70 years since that park was laid out just shortly before the coronation of our late Queen Elizabeth II, which is why Coronation Fields took its name, because people had an impromptu party on that day when they had very other little facilities whilst the building of the phase 2 of the new town was taking place in 1953. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hannah. Any councillors, comments, questions? Councillor Goh?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I should probably make 2 declarations of interest. One is that I'm a ward councillor at Leverstock Green, and the other is I'm a patient at that Bennett's End surgery. I looked through this coronation, the proposal, and I very much approve and applaud the enhancement of the green space. I can see Councillor Brommer has done an awful lot of work and really thinking about how people use that space. I have to say that I was elected partly on a commitment to the enhancement of amenities and green space for residents. And of course in Leverstock Green, and many of my Leverstock Green residents are adjacent to that, to the proposed amenity. I am also very keen on, I've got just a few comments on it. Very keen on encouraging active travel to those amenities. I think that is part of what I think we should be doing. The fact that amenity is some distance from Gadebridge Park. The residents of Bennett's End and Leverstock Green. And Gadebridge Park is fantastic and it's really good. But one of the advantages of this is it obviates the need for people to get in their 4x4s and trundle across to Gadebridge Park. And I know we had debating about the parking in Gadebridge Park. It's really good to have such an amenity within walking distance of so many people. And so if we can do all we can to encourage active travel to those things, I always go on about bike racks. I know that not everybody can use them. There are people, families with young children who can't, and it's not a cure, but it is one thing that can be done. And I do think we should be, whilst car parks are good, in that they take the pressure off neighbouring roads through I mean, there is parking at Bennett's Gate. There's quite a lot of parking there, free parking there at Bennett's Gate, as well as the surgery itself has a car park. As a patient, I have driven on occasion to that surgery, and I've always parked in the car park, the main surgery car park, not actually having to trundle through the potholes. So my personal experience is that I haven't had a problem with parking at the surgery, and I haven't needed to use that overflow car park. I went there, having seen it though. I think we just need to be a bit clear on this. It's not currently a car park. There's a sign above it which says this is not a designated car park. So I think we just need to be clear on that. It is a space. It's a space which is owned by DBC. It's certainly a space which is in need of repair because it's awful. It's a horrible eyesore. It needs something done on it. I think that we should certainly encourage the repairing of that space. I think we also need to look at the demand for parking and to what extent it's needed, the extra parking there, if we're trying to encourage active travel, and there's lots of parking on the roads around it. So it's something that needs to certainly be up for looking at, and certainly it's the property of Dacorum Borough Council, and certainly Dacorum Borough Council ought to look after its own property, particularly in areas such as Bennett's End, where the people there are more deprived than others. So the first thing is I would, if possible, I would do perhaps more to encourage active travel to and from the area, in line with the ethos of what I think our policy should be. And the second thing is, it's a great space and it's really convenient for the people who don't live near Cambridge Park, live at the other end from Cambridge Park. But perhaps we could have a little bit more of what's on page 10 of the brochure, or page 54 of our packs. Perhaps more of that could have found its way into the amenities, such as the cafe. Having a cafe space seems to have been a priority for people. That cafe could possibly generate some income. Also, by analogy with Cambridge Park, maybe a splash park or something there as well for the summer. And the other thing is, I think it's a real opportunity to enhance the identity of Bennett's End as a module, as part of a self-contained module of Hemel Hempstead. I mean, we have Leverstock Green Village. We've got a lovely village centre, which I'm keen to improve and develop. But part of the identity of Bennett's End is perhaps something a little more than just the utility, but perhaps art there. You know, something to do with art installations or sculptures, or particularly perhaps a performance space like a bandstand, for example. I mean, another declaration of interest. I mean, Hemel Band, and we play in village fetes all over the place. Chelfont St Giles, little Gabston, all sorts of places, and these places have a bandstand, and it's a real focal point. So somewhere a performance space, something that actually the people of Bennett's End can sort of focus around. So those are really my points. I mean, we want active travel, but more public amenity from page 10 of the report, such as like a cafe, and then more sort of to do with the identity, more artistic things, performance and art things. Thank you very much.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I can pick up both comments. Thank you very much for really extensive comments, which are really helpful. In terms of commitment and in terms of the capital program that we have outlined in the report on the implementation of phase 1, I think it's important to understand in terms of the master plan, there is a master plan that encompasses, a wider vision. There is also the ability to then identify in phase 1 what's available to actually achieve something in the short term. So the report is quite clear that the car park, the kind of future use of the tennis courts as car park is one of the priority and is part of phase 1. I think in terms of the funding strategy, this will be part of the recommendation to Cabinet in relation to how that we're going to finalise that as part of a capital allocation. And I'm also in contact with the surgery in terms of understanding as well, continue to discuss how can we work together on this project, because like we said, it's all about also the benefits of the residents. In terms of the future aspirations and in terms of active travel, for us it's quite easy to include bike racks as part of the project, and we can certainly do that. I think it's also good, it's always good to encourage cycling. But with regards to other aspirations, cafe, arts installation, the cafe particularly was part of some people might have said that, but in terms of the actual feasibility of all of that needs a lot of work and needs to understand really what is it that we want to do. And I'm not entirely sure we got the footfall there for a full cafe, but we did discuss about the possibility of having, for example, a van or something that can be there for the summer and could cater for some of that for the summer. So that kind of response is there. With regards to art facility, music, etc., it's a great point. Both Ian and I, our background, these parks and open spaces, and we feel the green infrastructure is a great asset also in relation to arts and culture and what can offer in terms of, outdoor events and music, outdoor theatre, etc. But this needs to be part of a more strategic approach. So we are working together with Diane as part of the arts and culture strategy to make sure that that also can be encompassed as part of the green infrastructure value of kind of arts and culture. So as part of a wider strategic discussion on how that can be integrated as part of the green infrastructure, and that needs to be part of of that kind of strategic thinking of how culture can be embedded in the quorum. So really useful comments, and we'll take that in various different ways. Thank you.
Councillor Timmis was first, but then.
Thank you, Chair. I think this looks like a great project. It looks fun. I think given that on your consultation, the thing that came out top with most people was surfacing the old tennis court, that really should be a priority. The other thing I wanted to ask is the surgery. Is the surgery car park open to all?
I don't know if it's open to all, but it's certainly not closed to all, if that makes sense.
Otherwise anyone can use it, and presumably if the surgery has expanded so much, then it must mean that there's pressure on that car park too, and so you really do need more car parking space. And given that, and given the fact that the surgery has expanded so much, is it possible the surgery would contribute towards increasing the parking? Because it must be to their advantage as well.
These are the discussions that we're having at the moment. I mean, I'm meeting with somebody from the Integrated Care Board and also liaising with the NHS and looking at how can we work together on that. I'm not sure. I can't promise anything. I think these are discussions that are happening at the moment in terms of trying to make sure that we're working together. But I don't know the outcome of that yet.
On this point, Councillor Gale, quickly.
Yeah, just on this point, I mean, I think, I'm not so sure that we should take the survey as conclusive that the surgery needs more parking. I mean, I don't know if you ask people whether they want, the verge hardening or parking solutions is very popular. And if you ask people really close whether they want more parking facilities around, they're going to say yes. And so I think the fact that people around want there to be more parking in general around where they are, it looks great. And the fact that although it's not a car park, it's being used for parking cars. I mean, the obvious answer to the question is, well, do you want to refurbish that car park? They're going to say yes, but it's not a car park. And I don't know whether, my personal experience is that I've never had occasion to venture into the overflow car park because I've always managed to find a space for my GP appointments, which are usually short. I go in, there's usually a couple of spaces there. I go into one, I go to my GP, I come out, and I don't see why it might be different at certain times of day. But there's loads of parking on Bennett's End Road, which is free, and there's also Bennett's Gate, which is all free parking. So it seems to be quite luxurious from what I see. So it may need looking into whether it's actually necessary to have extra parking just for the surgery.
I'll ask for Councillor Santamaria to wait just a moment because I had a couple of members get very excited on this particular point. Councillor Whitelow is first, and then Councillor Hammond.
Well, actually, I'm responding, if you wish, to Councillor Gale Jonathan's comments. When I ventured into Leverstock Green in the fairly recent past and earlier than that, most of the comments I got back on the doorstep were about people, especially older people, who were patients at the doctor's surgery and were bemoaning the state of it. Now, they don't differentiate between the doctor's surgery car park and the disused tennis court, which is in a deplorable state. And those comments and those complaints have continued. And it's quite clear from the responses to the survey that it was the #1 priority for all the residents. So clearly, I don't think you can just dismiss it as people seek, there might be capacity there or going on the roads. It is a fact that it's being used now as a car park. People expect it to be refurbished. And if you want to carry out the full-scale completion of this scheme, then are you going to leave an eyesore like the tennis court at the heart of it? Because if you are going to stimulate use of that area, then there will inevitably be an increase even more in parking. Thank you.
Councillor Vanner.
Chair, I'll be brief. So I'd like to encourage my constituents to walk and cycle because it's not only very good for the environment, it's also very good for their mental health. But when you have symptoms, meaning that you have to visit your doctor, you hardly feel the need to get your bike out and cycle to the doctor's surgery. My other point is that Councillor Gale's not been round the back because that's where the 11 doctors, the 6 reception staff, the 2 nurses, the 2 pharmacists and the staff who work in the pharmacy all park their cars so that Councillor Gale can park his car in front of the surgery. The reason is that the people who work there are acutely aware of the pressures on car parking. So what they do is they park round the back. And I've not been as fortunate as Councillor Gale because every time I've been there, I can't park at the front of the surgery. So the other thing is I have spoken to the partners at the surgery and they do realise that this is a real problem and they're acutely aware that if somebody does fall and they're of a great age and they fracture their neck or femur, that this is likely to be their last Christmas. The surgery is spending £75,000 on funding a new metal skylight because the wooden skylight that they have has got mould in it and they can't carry out invasive procedures like mole removal. And that's one of the things that would precipitate a visit to an urgent care centre or an A&E. And I think that if we can have more procedures being done actually in primary care, that would really help pressure on urgent care centres and A&E. Actually, we should get most stuff done at GP surgeries, and that's where their additional funding is going this year so that they can bring back invasive procedures to that surgery, and they can only do that with a metal skylight. These are the pressures that primary care surgeries are facing.
Councillor England, has the moment passed? Can I bring in Councillor Santa Maria? Or will you? Yes, Santa Maria.
I'm not against this. I just want to say I'm going to sound like I am, but I'm not. The £100,000 for a car park seems like a lot. Is there, what will that actually include? And is there any kind of, we could just resurface it and not do other things that would be cheaper?
To make it work properly as a car park, you're going to have to start from scratch because it's just, there's no sub base on it, there's no drainage on it. So that £100,000 basically fixes it by putting in, there is an attenuation tank that goes under that drains the water and stops it going back into how it is now. We could probably spend £20,000 resurfacing it. The minute it rains and we're going to be back in the same situation. So it's kind of, I suppose it's spending a bit more money, offers better value for money and longevity on the scheme.
Sure. And with the discussions of, it being needed for the surgery, presumably this car park will be available to all users of the park, whether or not they're patients of the surgery. Is that correct?
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
Councillor Bromham, you were trying to get in.
No, I'm not going to take ages.
Briefly, please.
Okay. So I am going to be brief, but first of all, I have to say, I think that Councillor Gale is absolutely bandstanding on this issue.
More frustrated now.
Moving on. I agree with Councillor Gale that, and I think we should amplify that this is a real credit to the leadership of Robin Bromham and Steph Horn. I didn't see this coming. I didn't think this was what we were going to be doing in the first 2 years of a Lib Dem administration. And I just think it's fantastic. So well done. It's not a car park. I think we've established that tonight. I think it's really important that we're clear about that. I personally think that it will become, at least proportionately, a car park for the surgery. Not completely, but proportionately. The surgery is business. What will be the financial arrangement, whether it's the surgery or whether it's the ICB or some other benefactor, for the future upkeep, to make sure that having done this, we don't fall into a continued reactive stance, which is where we've been, on the maintenance and renewal of that space, whatever it's called. That's a rhetorical.
So I've been quite deeply into all this over the last 2 years, so I could got an immense amount that we could discuss. But car park first, yeah, that's quite a small part of the overall project. It's the most prominent bit, the bit that people notice first. But yeah, there is a surgery car park, but have to bear in mind that they don't control the parking there. So the usage of it is quite tidal. There's a nursery school nearby. So there's probably has to be give and take in terms of the usage of that car park. If on average they're using quite a lot more space than the spaces in that car park, maybe we should be asking for a contribution. But I don't think that's, you know, want to see all this happen. That's the main thing. There may well be increased demand in the future. You know, we want to move people away from reliance on cars, but in the future, if we've got extra features in the park, like a better playground, and we've just got the tennis courts and the adult gym and things, people will travel from further afield. So there will be more people probably just driving to the park. At the moment, the park is a bit bleak, so there's probably not that many people who actually travel very far to go to it. Although it's a fantastic spot and it's got brilliant views. So people just go and sit there on the grass, but there aren't even any benches where you can sit to look at the view. So, and this is why the sort of thing that really struck me when we came in, and it's the sort of thing that I really wanted to do as a councillor, to get stuff which is really good value for money and really levels up. I get the feeling that Decorum over the years has been sort of just done the bare minimum to maintain things that need to be functional, and things in the parks have just gradually, you know, when something becomes defective, it just gets removed. So the playing fields have gone, the pavilion there has just been disused for decades. I suspect there's probably benches and play equipment which has just gone, and so now there's quite a bleak space in a fantastic location and with thousands of people within walking and cycling distance. So it's an obvious place where we need to be investing. And I have asked Ian and Steph on this and other projects to work on them completely objectively in terms of prioritisation, looking at the value for money, the cost benefit, and we identified, for example, Highfields as being a good place for the neighbourhood, sort of spruce up the future neighbourhoods initiatives. Similarly, we identified this area in the Bennett's End ward, Coronation Fields, as being an absolute prime location for where we can really benefit all our taxpayers. So already it's been daffodils and trees planted, and people are even thrilled about that, but there's a lot more that can be done, and I think it will transform people's lives. And I think, as Pete mentioned, it will be great for the public health and the general feeling of optimism. And so the social prescribing, maybe will include the adult gym and things, which will be quite nearby. So yeah, the pavilion, that's the next most obvious thing to be looking at. It seemed to me to be quite a good brick building with a decent roof on it. It's got electricity and water. It gets checked regularly for Legionella and things like that. And so I was optimistic that it might get repurposed, and maybe be a cafe or you know, we had meetings and I know John Burney, rest in peace, was quite enthusiastic about trying to use it for repair workshops and that kind of thing. But I think the decision was taken largely from the financial side that it should be removed, and that will also open up the vista a bit more as well, and to have a skate park on that site. So the overall philosophy is to plan things before we have the money, not to wait until the money is there and then have a panic to how to use it. And so everything, all the features, all the investments are being done in the most productive way possible. So the architects have already designed, you know, for example, the trees are shading the path. And we've looked at where the desire lines are, so people can walk from street to street without getting their shoes muddy if we put those new paths in. And so overall, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, that this will be the beginning, you know, part of a big, much more optimistic outlook for the whole of Dacorum, and especially for the areas in Hemel which have become a bit run down. There was a play on Radio 4 the other day, which was kind of alluding to this, I think, and this general feeling of a bit of hopelessness. But we've got to be optimistic. We've got to envisage a better future for our residents, and it's got to be good value for money.
I would perhaps suggest the reasons why this hasn't happened before was because the money's not been there before. Very simply. And the reason why the authority is in the financial position it's in is because of the financial position it's had before, but I don't really want to go down that route. My concerns with this report is that I was slightly worried about the amount of money that's been spent on planning rather than doing, because the planning costs seem to have been quite high. But overall, I personally am very supportive of the project. I think it's a very good thing. I think on balance, I wonder if the car park is actually the most important part of the project. And reading the report, it looked like there was a sort of a goal to kind of deprioritise it. Members have expressed opinions each way on it. I don't feel there's anything to be gained by discussing that any further. The recommendation on the report was to endorse the project generally. Is that agreed by everyone? Agreed. Councillor Santamaria.
Chair, would it be inappropriate to suggest a site visit for the committee if that's possible to be arranged so that we can sort of be walked through the area and the proposed changes?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you wish.
If that's what we want. The only caveat I put on that is that we would hope people will turn up. Because it was very frustrating, the last visit to Cupid Green that was organised, only 3 members turned up and only one of them was a committee member. After the amount of effort that was put into organising that, that was very frustrating.
Maybe if there's interest, then sure. Otherwise, I'll just go and
other local ward members, of course. Right, next item. My computer has decided to die on me. Is the PSPO report, and I would like to hand over to Sarah if you want to present the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I will take the report as read. However, I will give a brief overview with regards to the PSPO as follows. There are currently 2 public space protection orders, PSPOs, in force in Dacorum. These relate to dog control, which is borough-wide, excluding National Trust land at the moment, and Hemel Town Centre. The PSPOs are one of the tools used by local authorities to support policing by introducing conditions or restrictions within specific areas to address issues of antisocial behaviour, thereby enhancing the police's ability to maintain public order. They also contribute to the council's corporate objectives, specifically around a cleaner and safer Dacorum
and the Community Safety Partnership Plan, specifically Strategic Priority 1, which is to reduce crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. PSPOs provide a mechanism to target specific nuisances and harmful behaviours, allowing police and authorised council officers to issue fixed penalty notices or take further action for breaches. As the town centre is a hotspot locally, for our neighbourhood policing team, the PSPO can be utilised to support policing through targeted restrictions or activities or behaviours that have historically been and continue to be an issue. The recent public consultation with regards to the renewal of the PSPOs indicated broad support from the respondents that took part for the renewal of both the dog control and the town centre PSPO. In proposing to extend the PSPO, we have also sought the feedback of the Community Safety Partnership, of which the Chief Executive of DBC is the chair. Community Safety Partnership Liaison Lead Joshua Smith has confirmed that the collective partnership support for the extension of the PSPOs, as it reinforces the ability to tackle specific local issues in hotspot areas. These are things such as dog fouling, dog control, spitting, and allows us to have effective management of such activities is important as it improves the visible look and feel of the area, enabling residents to feel safer. To that end, officers recommend the following: that the committee note the outcome of the public consultation contained within the report, that the committee agrees the extension of the dog control public spaces protection order, that the committee considers the option of inclusion of National Trust land within the Borough of Dacorum in relation to specifically dog fouling, that the committee agrees the extension of the Hemel Hempstead Town Centre Public Space Protection Order for the areas previously covered as outlined in Appendix 2 of the report, with a slight change to the enforceable area to enable cyclists to access cycle racks near Primark without dismounting. And finally, that the committee considers a further consultation around the cycling and skateboarding prohibition within the town centre to inform next steps around possible change to that prohibition. We have also been in discussion with Dacorum's neighbourhood policing team. Historically, they have been very supportive of our use of the PSPO. There is currently a new leadership team, Inspector Nick Ablett and Chief Inspector Paul Stanbridge. At the time of presenting, the leadership team have not been able to provide any data or evidence to support consideration of the PSPO extension. However, they have committed to reviewing with locality teams and providing proactive feedback via the Community Safety Partnership as to its benefits and use. So next steps for us, following discussion here, the final decision will be made by Cabinet on the 8th of July. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Timmins.
No. Thanks for that report. I note on page 103 that you say, in response to, I think, some of the consultation, that there is a bin review currently in progress with Clean, Safe and Green. I presume that's a dog poo bin review.
It's primarily a dog bin review, but the dog bin review will definitely look at the wider use of bins, and therefore, if there is a need to change the disposal, to change the position of the bins.
The very point that's put in here by, I presume, the consultation is that they want more dog poo bins, but in rural areas. Now, in rural areas, the black and gold sort of urban bins look totally out of place.
We are actually phasing them out, and because people can use the normal bins for...
Yes, but I'm just saying the normal bins, yes, totally out of place on rural footpaths.
So we can look at that. We can look at that.
And I would very much, because I actually, this is one of my hobby horses, that's some fly tipping in our area, and in particular we do have a lot of problems because a lot of people have dogs and a lot of people are not conscious, socially conscious enough to pick up. So, and it would make it much easier, and it does happen much more. If you have a poo bin there, for instance, in Studden, which is Bedfordshire, admittedly, they have poo bins at all sort of corners of the common, and as a result, you tend to get people using them and not leaving the dog poo around. And so it would be really great if we could have a few more dog poo bins. I do appreciate the problem is the collection.
Yes. So I think if you... Oh, sorry.
They're presumably collecting from the black bins too. So, I mean, I would have thought that where you're allowed to put your dog poo bags in with all the other rubbish. So I don't see why it shouldn't be possible, and I certainly feel in rural places that we need less, less urban type of bins on the rural footpaths.
I think we take this away in terms of as a comment, as a general comment for our review of bins, and then we can be more specific about what we're doing in terms of that, because it's probably a different type of discussion, but I do note your comments.
Thank you very much. Could I also ask a secondary question?
Yes.
Are the PSPOs going to be in any other places other than Hemel Hempstead and Berkhamsted?
At the moment, this is just the renewal of the current PSPOs. We are then going to be looking at potentially, depending obviously the outcome of obviously consultation with partners, etc., expanding or covering additional prohibitions. But that's obviously work that's going to happen further down the line, come in the autumn. That's not something that's covered via what we're discussing today. This is specifically the renewal in relation to Hemel Town Centre and in relation to dog control across the borough.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Problem was
The
trying.
bin thing. So basically, that Ian went out because that's his topic really, and it's not really part of this item. But the dog poo bins are not ergonomic. Apparently, there's only one officer who actually goes and empties them all, and it's a health and safety hazard because of the way that the contents have to be lifted out. They don't have very big capacity, and so the strategy is to replace all of the dog bins with the larger size litter bins, which can be opened at the front. And also the locations of them are being optimised to ensure that there's vehicle access, because some of them are in out of the way places. So there's a whole mapping operation going on with that.
But you must admit, to have those big black bins on rural footpaths looks totally out of place.
It's that aesthetic.
I mean, it's still happening in other counties. In Bedfordshire, they've got them there, so I can't see why it's such an issue
I
here.
think what we're getting carried away here on a tangential angle. We'll await the review of the bins review, because that's something down the track. Councillor Mitchell, I think.
It's about the dog control. So in the area where I am, which is Gaybridge, we've got the valley or the dip, as it's commonly known, and lots of people walking their dogs off the lead, and there's antisocial behaviour resulting from that. We've had several dog attacks on people, on children even, and it's not just when they've been off the lead. Actually, we've had 2 dogs recently, which I think your team may have received information about, that have attacked children because they're just out of control. So first of all, does the control include in my area ensuring that the dogs are kept on leashes if requested? I know it's not a mandatory thing, but also muzzling, whether that's included, because these 2 particular dogs, if they were muzzled, there wouldn't be an issue, and is an irresponsible owner not muzzling their dogs?
And I completely understand where you're coming from with that. Obviously, it's awful if children, etc., can't play in a park or whatever, and obviously without the fear of being attacked. There is a police element to this. They actually deal with dangerously out of control dogs. That's not something that generally sits with the local authority. We do have animal welfare powers, and obviously we do have the PSPO, so we can ask for the dog to be leashed. You know, we can check that they have the means to pick up, that kind of thing. We can't require them to be muzzled, and obviously depending on the type of dog, it may be that they are required to be muzzled because of other legislation. But as you've done, I think I would encourage you to report it to the police at the time of the incident, so that they can obviously go out and obviously deal with that incident, and also report it to us, because it may be that the dog is known to us, and there may be other concerns that we're already dealing with, so we can work in partnership with the police on that matter. But I would encourage people to report any issues that they have, so that they can be dealt with appropriately.
Okay, sometimes it's just been a case of dogs jumping up at children, but that can cause trauma. You know, which can
still be dealt with.
Yes.
Fear and distress.
Fear and distress.
Deal with that.
Right,
Can I
okay.
just come in on the point of the dogs being out of control? If they are witnessed by an authorised officer at the time, and they instruct the person in control of the dog at the time to share the lead, and they fail to do so, that is an offence under the PSPO.
Right, okay. So that's something that if we have an issue, perhaps some patrols could be put in place.
If people can feed information into us about times and days and types of dogs and things like that, then obviously we can target that. We can target that around that. Exactly, yeah.
But it's a shame in the case of the dogs that need muzzling, because I don't actually think it's the dog's fault. I think it's the owner's, and I wouldn't want it to get to the stage where the police think that they need to be put down or something like that, when actually it's just that they're not being walked responsibly. And they may have issues if they're rescue dogs.
You want to muzzle the owner. Councillor Gale.
Yes, I mean, off the topic of dogs, but I know that the whole idea of the renewing the PSPO partly is to show as a council we care about the state of things and people's behaviour. But I also think that we, as well as showing that we care about that, we also should show that we respect people as well. And I have a question about the signage, because I know that a lot of these, one of the things that is covered is like urinating and defecating. Now, I don't know, I find it a little bit disrespectful to see a sign which says do not urinate or defecate in this area. Not because I want to, but because I just would like to think that my local authority thinks a little bit more of me than to think that I would just take a dump where I feel like. And also, what are the implications of the sign for places that are not covered by the PSPO? I mean, it's a slightly odd thing. So I would rather have signage that reminds people to be considerate, which shows that we care, but also that we trust as well.
That is something we're already in discussion with Robin about, and with regards to the signage and how we can kind of make it more positive and maybe not include the specific words. And we're obviously looking at the legislation as to how we can do that. Because as you've rightly said, it's not something you want to be greeted with when you walk into town. No. Unfortunately though, people do urinate and defecate in Hemel, in the Marlows, and we've issued, I think it was 40 fixed penalties over the life of the contract.
And you couldn't do that if the sign didn't say no, presumably.
Well, that's obviously something we're looking into, but obviously people need to be aware of what they're not permitted to do. You know, you or I may say that that's obvious, but unfortunately it's not always. For some individuals. So.
Can we take some lesson perhaps from other boroughs to do other boroughs have?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not something I've seen everywhere, that kind of thing. So.
Absolutely, it's something we're already in discussion about.
I'm picking up from comments that members are quite happy with the status quo, if I can call it that. One of the recommendations concerns National Trust land.
Yes.
Do any members have any views on that?
The same rules.
90% of respondents, the public respondents, are obviously in favour of us adding that.
I've got quite a few points that I'd like to relate. This is something I've been working on for 2 years, if I may. I'll take that point first, the National Trust. It's just the National Trust was not included in the map of decorum, so including it now is just simplifying it really, and I don't think there's actually going to be enforcement in those areas. I think what's brought it about is with the Chiltern Beach Woods and so on, there's been a recognition of excess nutrients in the soil being a problem, so the National Trust have now got more of a policy of picking up rather than the stick and flick, which is producing unnatural levels of nutrient in the soil. So, you know, hardly any of this report will make any difference to anything really. So the only significant change is the change to the cycling sort of forbidden zone in the Marlows, and I think that was just a mistake on the original map, because the Moor End Road going to the cycle racks, people were being issued with fines there, even though it is actually a vehicular route for service vehicles, and that just seemed to be wrong. And in fact, the adjacent alleyway was excluded from the PSPO map when for no particular reason. So I think that the cartographer just did the map wrong, basically. So we've just corrected that, and it means that these contractors will not be able to find people who are cycling along the Moor End Road from the roundabout to the cycle racks, which I understand has been happening. if I can outline the whole issue, this is something which we had quite a few concerns about when we first started the administration 2 years ago. And the public space protection orders are really the minor issue. You know, we've got bylaws and we don't really talk about those because we don't enforce them. They're just a list of things which could be enforced according to them. It's more that they were the public space protection orders were brought in along with this new method of enforcement using contractors who are funded by the fines that they issue, and the potential problems then caused by those perverse incentives. So that will be a completely different topic to this one, and something which I think we'll be addressing before too long. And that's more important to get that aspect of it right than these public space protection orders. Yeah, there was as I think Johnny alluded to, there was a suggestion to remove things which should be quite obvious, like defecating and spitting, and potentially could be enforced as littering anyway. We had the whole thing on the A41 where the urinating was being enforced as littering, which was rather debatable, and we put a stop to that. And but it's not possible to do that at this stage because it would need a different kind of consultation, as I understand, to actually remove those elements. Yeah. And there's been concerns about magnitude of the fines and so on, but that's all part of a separate issue. So yeah, as Johnny alluded to, really want to move to a positive way of improving our towns in decorum, and so having something like a town code, share with care, love your town, take your litter home. Other towns, other boroughs seem to manage to do that. They don't seem to need these draconian measures.
We'll have to, before I bring Sarah in, we'll have to agree to disagree wholly on that point. First off, the bylaws were virtually unenforceable, which is the reason why the last administration brought in the PSPOs. Secondly, this issue of whether you use a contractor, we had to use a contractor because we didn't have the council staff to do it, and whether they're incentivised by the number of tickets they hand out. Well, that's a good thing, because if they're handing out tickets, they're doing the job. So I'm sorry, I have to disagree quite strongly with that opposition to the principle. And we did, the previous administration, we faced a lot of opposition from the current administration when we did it. So, it's not, that criticism I find very difficult. I also, before I bring Sarah in, the fifth recommendation here tonight is that members consider a further consultation around the cycling and skateboarding prohibition to inform next steps around possible changes to the prohibition. I personally remember that we brought that in because pedestrians in the Marlows were regularly being hit by cyclists. So that prohibition was brought in for a reason, and I would resist or oppose any, I don't have an issue with doing a consultation, but in terms of reversing that, I would strongly oppose. Sarah, sorry, you were trying to get words in edgeways here.
Basically, with regards to the consultation from the public, they've come back and basically said that they're not sure about the current prohibition with regards to cycling. And what we're looking at doing is potentially changing the prohibition, not getting rid of it. So there are other councils that use prohibitions whereby if you're riding antisocially or like doing wheelies or things like that, you can be asked to dismount. And if you don't, then that's when you commit the offence. It's not just the very fact that you are cycling, because obviously quite a lot of people are responsible and they can cycle and they won't hit people, etc. It just gives more clarity around the types of behaviour that we wouldn't expect to see when using a bicycle or other mode of transport, skateboard or whatever. But that's what we wanted to consult about, whether people wanted to change the prohibition, not get rid of it necessarily.
Can I just come in on a point?
Yeah.
Please.
Just around the skateboarding element, I think it was brought in not in the same way as the cycling issue. It was the skateboarders were attracted to the nice new street furniture to jump on and use at the bandstand, and it was that type of antisocial behaviour as opposed to going through.
They were all brought in for a specific reason. That's why all of these things are in the PSPO. That's why all of these things exist, all of these prohibitions.
Helen,
Sorry, Councillor Bing.
I would like to ask, I know it isn't much to do with this, but what's to protect the public where the cars keep going round the bit where the buses go? I regularly use a bus, and the other Sunday I sat waiting for a bus and there was 30 cars came through and 3 taxis.
That's something we can take away and feedback to the...
Well, to be honest, I've asked it several times, if not find them. I just think they shouldn't be coming round because they park outside the shops and the buses have to get round them. Honestly, 30 cars I saw, and I go down the town a lot and I wait at the bus stops, and every time I can guarantee there's at least 5 cars past me.
I will feed it back to the community.
Because I think something ought to be done about it, because that's just as dangerous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Councillor
Oh,
Santamaria.
good.
Thank you. On
Thank
the
you, because I've been
subject of the bike, of cycling, on the subject of the cycling, if it were to be permitted for, responsible cyclists to cycle in the pedestrianised area, would there be specific cycle paths for them to use, just so people know where to avoid?
That's something that we would consult on. Obviously, we would have to go back out to consultation and ask the public how they feel about that, and obviously what ideas they have with regards to how it can work, because obviously at the moment you've got the intermingling of cycles and pedestrians, and there's also kind of feedback within the consultation as well from parents saying they're having to pull their child out of the way because they're nearly getting hit by someone on a bicycle. So yeah, so it's just weighing up the different uses in that specific area.
Any other committee members?
Just on the bikes, I'm sorry, is it okay to go ahead? It is just about the town centre, isn't it, rather than the neighbourhood centres, is that right?
At the moment, it's the town centre and the old town, isn't it? There's a map within the report that shows you the area that's covered by the town centre. Yeah, and the water gardens.
Water gardens, yeah, the Marlows and Riverside, and then it comes along up into the old town.
The main
finishes at the end.
Yeah.
Because yesterday I was sat in Gabish Cafe with 2 PCSOs, and as we're sitting there having our cups of coffee, the electric bikes were just zooming past, and scooters, I mean, so many.
Yeah.
And that's such a small area, that walkway, that, it's so risky that it could clash with a pedestrian, an elderly pedestrian particularly, who might not be able to jump out of the way in time. So, I really think it should be extended to the neighbourhood centres as well.
I will bring you in, Councillor Bromley, in just a moment. Councillor Whitelow, and then I'll...
Right, it's my favourite hobby horse, which is the dangers that are possible to be caused to pedestrians by people on bikes on shared use footpaths. And Adrian will know I regularly quizzed him in the past about what do you do when you're walking on, say, Midland Road, Midland Hill, which is a shared use footpath, which is a steep hill, and at least 4 times I've complained about the fact that I've nearly been hit by people on scooters and on bikes using that particular footpath. You cannot hear them because of the traffic noise. You do not know if you've got a doddery old person walking up or down with their back to it. You do not know where they're going to go on the footpath. And I really believe that we should be introducing bylaws that are enforceable, where vehicles bicycles, scooters, electric bikes, electric scooters. I've even seen somebody on a 2-wheeled thing with a handle, I don't know what it's called, going along on the road. At least it's on the road. But they're doing 20 and 30 miles an hour. They're not being slow. And they are only thinking about what they are doing. They do not anticipate what pedestrians do. And I really think they should be made to have some kind of warning device, or some such on these Vehicles, well, vehicles is all encompassing. You know what I'm talking about. If we are going to be considering the PCS, this report, Chairman, I'm probably going to put forward for the work programme. It's really something that we need to tackle before we do have a serious accident in decorum. We've seen across the country that elderly people have been killed in collisions like this, and you know, which actually makes my point for me.
Before Sarah replies, is it on the same point?
Yeah, we just basically, it's a pedestrian zone. The key to it surely is the title. It's a pedestrian zone. Anybody who wants to cycle can go down Waterhouse Street. It runs parallel with it. It'd be a whole lot quicker to cycle on Waterhouse Street and get back on the end than it is to go through pedestrian. Final thing is, there are so many people out there now, pedestrians and people on electric bikes, normal bikes or scooters with headphones in.
Yeah.
They haven't got a clue what is going around them. And therefore, I think this matter is only going to get worse. Things get faster, people couldn't carry it down. Anybody's going to cycle isn't going to care. If anybody's going to cycle badly, couldn't care a damn about the rules. Yeah? Anybody who's sensible will. Pedestrian zone, it should be pedestrian zone.
Sarah, finally.
Thank you for your feedback. Just with regards to what Councillor Whitelow and Councillor Mitchell have said as well, as I've said earlier, we are going to be looking at potentially a new PSPO. So if you want to feed in things, obviously you believe are issues, and obviously if we can evidence those, then we can look at the potential of including those within that. So obviously you're saying about the neighbourhood centres, and obviously you're concerned about people using electric scooters and things in other areas that are not currently covered. That is something that we could potentially look at as part of that.
Thank you. So do we send it to you or to Dean? Yeah, okay.
Councillor Bronwyn. So there's been a few points there. So ideally, all this stuff would be done by the police. I'm surprised the police didn't go out and grab those kids. So our contractors can't tackle minors, which is where a lot of the problems occur. And those youngsters ought to be, you know, we need more bikeability and things like that to actually train people. And people who are trained normally know the hierarchy of road users, and they're polite and considerate. And that's the important thing. And this is why we need positive messaging with the town code and so on. And the Canal and Rivers Trust, for example, on their towpaths, they have share with care. So that means if you're going past animals, children, or especially if you're coming up behind pedestrians, even if it's safe, you have to be considerate so as not to cause distress, even if you're not actually causing danger. So the police, when they enforce these things, I think we should be doing it ideally. Well, the police should be doing it, and we're having to replace the function that they're not doing at the moment. And so their code in terms of cyclists, for example, is that they only stop people who are actually doing something dangerous or intimidating. If it's people who are just trying to keep themselves and everybody else safe, then they don't take action, is the normal informal guideline. And when they do issue fines, it's about £35, not £100, which is disproportionate to other things like parking, which is 25 or 35. And there are other districts which have already formalised that in their PSPO, so that they will only enforce it if it is dangerous or intimidating. But that could be done as advice to the enforcement contractor. It doesn't have to be, you know, we could do it either way, but it would mean that they wouldn't issue as many fines, so they struggle to pay their bills. In terms of the issues with the cars and so on in the Marlows, is again, that's a police matter. It's a highway, and the vehicles are disobeying the no vehicle signs. So we just need more police to enforce these things. And you know, it used to be a road, two-directional road going through the Marlows, so it wouldn't be completely beyond the realms of possibility to have just two ways for bicycles. But I agree, that's a bit further down the way. I've been to the Netherlands, where that's just normal practice to have the bicycles going down a red zone in the middle of the pedestrianised area, and the pedestrians walk outside, and it seems to work absolutely fine and be quite safe, and everybody's being considerate. So we have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because there are a few people behaving dangerously, it doesn't mean that all of the people doing that sort of activity should be completely banned. If we have some bad drivers, it doesn't mean to say that you should close all the roads where the bad drivers happen to be. You know, so you know, these things have got to be proportionate. And the illegal e-bikes were mentioned as well, which I think is probably a result of Brexit. We're not enforcing our borders anymore. We are importing illegal goods now because we're not checking stuff that's imported, and there are basically electric bikes. Sorry, I'll wash my mouth out later. And these bikes, I'm pretty shocked when they overtake. I might be cycling down a road and a bike will come past me at twice the speed, and that's pretty horrifying. And they don't have number plates or any accountability. They don't have helmets or whatever. So that's another thing where again, it's really the police. I think I don't know whether something like a PSPO would even be applicable.
I don't want to know. They won't even. Councillor England, you were trying to get a word in.
Ready? I mean, I largely agree with a lot of what Robin has just said, perhaps not all of it. I've been asking for evidence of harm from cycling in the Marlows for years, and no one has provided it. The comments which are made, the reports of this thing nearly happened, seem to relate to minors who can't be addressed by this PSPO. So currently we're not addressing that problem. I think in order to address that problem, we need to recognise that it is a culture issue. We have left cycling to people, we've left cycling and wheeling to people who wear balaclavas, and I don't think we should do that. We need to create a share with care culture. That means we need to be a little bit brave, and we need to embrace a future where, just like in the Netherlands, people understand about cycling. Lots of them do it. The reason we have such a bad cycling culture here is that not many people do it. And if we had more people doing it, and we could encourage people to do it by what we're talking about here, then we would get better behaviour. I accept that there are some risks inherent, I do, but as I say, nobody has provided any evidence of actual harm to me. And I have asked, and I've asked for years, and it hasn't been done. So I think that we can achieve more with more cyclists, and they would be more mature cyclists, and they would be more respectful cyclists, because we would be creating a space for them. Because they had a space, the young cyclists who come to town would learn how to do cycling properly. And there's just one other thing. I've been urged by some people at HCC recently to stop saying the word cyclist, because these people are just people on bikes. That's what they are, just people on bikes. Let's call them people on bikes, because they're just trying to get around.
Right. I think we've dealt with the debate. The recommendations here are that SPA OSC note the outcome of the public consultation. Is that noted? Thank you. OSC agrees to the extension of the dog control public spaces protection order. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed. OSC considers the option of inclusion of national trust land within ... Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. OSC agrees to the extension of the town centre public spaces orders to areas previously covered as outlined ... Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. That SPA OSC considers a further consultation around the cycling skateboarding prohibition to inform next steps. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Agreed. Good. In which case, that is item 9 done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that leaves us with...
Could I just add something? Looking at the comments that you did with the consultation, what stands out is how many people feel unsafe in the town centre. And I think that's something, I know it's not specifically, but in general, that is something that I think we should be thinking about.
Well, that's something that the Community Safety Partnership are obviously looking at, and obviously this is one of those tools to make people feel safer in those areas. Obviously, this isn't the whole answer, but this is one
Part
element.
of it,
It's one element that we can use. Yeah.
Right. On the work programme, members have work programme as it is. As members will see, the rest of the year is looking a bit barren.
So it's pre-cabinets, isn't it?
Yeah. Has anybody got any comments on what's already in there? Before we get to additions, anything on the comments that's already in there?
Vocal this evening. Luton Airport. People should be aware that the huge expansion that was turned down by the inspectors, objected to, but then approved by the Secretary of State. Now the group has been set up to for a judicial review of that decision. So I just think we should be aware of that on this committee and indeed in the council.
Okay, we're now aware of it. Are you suggesting we should be scrutinising it?
I think it would, I don't know, we can't scrutinise a judicial review, can we? But we can report on it. And I think, I think one of the things that, side effects that really, people sitting here don't really recognise the impact that Luton Airport has until the M1 has an accident. And then I bet a lot of people around here notice then that the roads get completely blocked. If you're going to have another 20 million, 19 to 22, no, that's probably 13 million more passengers trying to get to Luton Airport, there's going to be more trouble on the roads, that's for sure. So I just think it's something that we should be aware of. It does affect part of decorum and in a large way, in a major way, and will only get worse. However, there's not, as you say, there isn't a thing to, I think this is something we should make sure people are aware of. And then when there is a judicial review, perhaps report on it.
This is work in progress. This isn't the final work programme, obviously. We've still got to review certain other items. And what we can do is add it to our scoring system to determine whether it comes on. It may end up as being a members' briefing as opposed to a scrutiny item.
A member briefing?
Yeah, but we can for all members, but that's certainly something we can.
That would be good, because at the moment we haven't identified anybody, as you know, in decorum anymore that's in the officers that's actually has any responsibility for Luton Airport.
Any other additions? Oh, blimey. I'll work right to let Councillor Mitchell first.
I think I've previously mentioned my issues in my ward with commercial vehicle parking, and I just really feel it's something that we should look at, because they're putting a huge strain and stress on residential parking. We've even got 7-ton vehicles being parked permanently, not moving at all, that are being used as storage for businesses.
We did consider this previously, but we weren't able to scrutinise because it's not something we control. It's entirely highways.
Yeah.
Councillor Whitelow.
Yeah, cyclists. Whether you call them cyclists or people on bike, they're all the same thing. They can cause a hazard on shared usage footpaths. And I think we really do need to address this in some way in this borough. I'm not talking about cyclists who are doing wheelies or misbehaving. I'm talking about cyclists who are doing what they're perfectly allowed to do legally. And yet They are encountering residents who might not know that they are there, elderly residents, people who have a balance problem, like me. I walk up the street sometimes and I suddenly find that I've gone 2 steps sideways.
I did that.
That's totally unexpected for me and for the cyclist. And we do need some form of protection. Brenda, you mentioned I think the mother with a child. The child nearly got knocked over by the cyclist and so on. And I think we need to address this. And I'm fed up actually, Adrian, with you sitting there smiling at me rather patronisingly every time I raise it.
Let's just, if I said park it, that would be the wrong word. Let's just say we will consider scrutinising that as part of the other ones we're considering. Yeah? Councillor Patterson.
On the deep dive next meeting, can you clarify what's meant by environment of town? Do you mean just Hemel Town, or do you mean all the towns in the core?
I think we discussed that it would be quite useful for you to have a review on how CSG performs in terms of street scene, what they actually do, how we measure performance, and that kind of element of it. So it includes the whole of it. That's the generic word of town, not just Hemel Town.
Big subject then.
Sorry?
It's a big subject.
I think that was
That's why it's a deep dive. Lot to dive into. If they haven't filled in the diving pit. Councillor Stephen.
I just want to back up a little bit here, because there's been some sort of discussion amongst the chairs of the scrutiny committees to work out what should go into deep dives, etc. There's been no feedback to us to tell us what the outcome of that is. And looking at this, we don't appear to have many items coming through on deep dives.
We're dependent on people to raise.
The items came through from the consultation, which was put out to officers, to members, and to the members of the public. We took what came through, what was in line with the strategies, what could be scrutinised. They were scored, and the ones that came up a lot, which from all of those areas, members, officers and residents, and it was decided that there would be 2 deep dives a year, where officers would work on those topics that came out top in terms of the scoring and the criteria. And I can speak to Mark Brooks and Cassie about sharing the scoring and stuff, but it was part of the initial scrutiny review that came through scrutinies before. The scoring system was on there. And then these items have been added to the work programme at 2 specific intervals, September and March, because there'll be in between that, there will be a performance deep dive as well on the performance data. So yeah, these are the ones that came out on top in terms of what came through from that consultation. The consultation will be like a regular thing, I think. We haven't quite decided how often they are going to go out to consultation, but we feel it's really important to get that feedback from. So this isn't the only way that you can suggest things for the work programme. It's via that consultation that goes out to officers and members also, and public, sorry. Because obviously it's the public's and the residents of our borough who we really want to encourage to feedback into that and what we scrutinise here.
But having said that, it's still for members to raise ideas for things we can scrutinise. Councillor Gale.
It just, sorry, forgive me if I've missed this, but the deep dive we've got environment of town, does that relate also back to the comments about people feeling unsafe? Is that the sort of thing we're talking about when you say environment of town?
I interpreted this as it was more the state of the environment and the cleanliness and etc.
Oh, I see. That sort of environment.
And this was public consultation. A member of public brought this up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cleanliness and environmental.
Yes.
That sort of environment, not just sort of general feeling vibe. Yeah. Okay.
That was the interpretation. But if members feels differently, then obviously we can include anything.
So perhaps the thing of people feeling unsafe might be something worth deep diving into.
This is kind of borderline with also community safety, and so it will be probably much wider, because this is scrutiny. This scrutiny is particularly around the environment, the cleanliness, and that's what I can bring to members.
Councillor Mitchell.
Are we allowed to get updates on things that we've previously scrutinised in this committee that maybe haven't progressed as far as
Do you have anything in mind?
the new parking solutions policy?
We'll come back.
Okay.
But in terms of the new work programme, you'll note that there is a section on there now. That obviously there's nothing at this meeting because we're starting the new cycle, but there is a feedback area. And I don't know if you remember from the scrutiny review coming to scrutiny the first time round, it was discussed that feedback from decisions made by Cabinet. So those items will appear. So it will go through the process of scrutiny, Cabinet, and then there's an opportunity to feed back on some of those issues that have gone through.
Just to provide very quick feedback, Steph might add to this, but the parking solutions, as you know, the critical path has been hiring somebody to manage it, and I believe that interviews have been done, and so that's imminent.
Oh, that's really good news.
Have we hired anyone yet, Steph?
Well, we were not that successful with the interviews, but we're now looking at interims because we understand the kind of urgencies of this. So there would be somebody in place, and the aim in terms of timescales, so we really want to get something back to members in autumn with some ideas on the prioritisation, because we want to move on from the policy we presented to you to actually what's going to happen to the schemes. Yeah. So we need someone to do that prioritisation and the project plan, etc. Yeah. We've done the JD, we've done the job evaluation, we went to market, we went to interviews, we got some interviews, but unfortunately we didn't find anybody who was suitable. So, but we understand the urgency, so we're now getting an interim in so that we can progress and we can give you back something in autumn, really, in terms of, because we understand the urgency. So, absolutely.
And on that note, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.